Okay.
Well, at least there's something on the other end of the spectrum.
Alright. Oh, it's good to be in real life and not on the screen. Even if all the place is a bit strange now.
Does it look strange to you?
Well, all these new rules kind of thing. All the
Very
stuff.
hygienic.
Very plasticky.
Very plasticky, well, we live in the plastic world.
Yeah. Well, it's
We live plastic lives, some of us just.
good or bad or neither. Maybe it's supposed to be plastic. But what I mean is what people do to themselves. It's like people are talked into literally killing themselves. Putting on a muzzle and rubber gloves and plastic gloves. Are they crazy? It's the quickest way to get sick is to wear a mask. But then you, first of all, you start breathing your carbon dioxide and your own bacteria, which is supposed to just fly away into space. Yeah. And of course, it's like you don't have a face.
No. And, well, in many respects it's been the response to the virus strange. Also economically, I think, leading to some people losing their jobs or losing part of their jobs where they have to work maybe the same hours but a bit isolated.
Yeah.
And of course, it's good that this cafe has survived.
Really, it's a bit of coughing. It doesn't really kill anyone, except maybe elderly people who already have problems with health, but then any kind of illness would be bad to them. Oh, what happens here is just really, really strange. And the rules are strange, like in England, starting, when was it? On Monday? Or is it already last week? It's like gathering more than 6 people is now illegal in England. And it's not about working places. So you can go to a working place, you can work there, you will not catch a virus. But if you just have a nice little picnic with your friends, no, then you will die. So really a lot of contradictory things about the virus. But first of all, what is really creepy is how people really, really destroy their own health. I mean, a mask will not help you if you're dealing with a real virus. It will effectively ruin your health. Same as rubber gloves. Whose great idea was that? You touch something, you don't get sick just because you touch it. You get sick if you touch it and then you maybe lick your fingers. You just don't lick your fingers. But if you're wearing gloves all day, it destroys your skin. Your health again. Yeah,
well, a good thing about it is that, of course, in some places these rules are blatantly disregarded. I'm told that in many Russian towns, smaller aside in Moscow, they heard about masks, but they've never seen anyone wearing one.
So it should be. You're not supposed to wear a mask if you're not ill, and if you're ill, sick, then you just don't go out, you stay at home and get better. That's simple. But if you're not sick, well then, why? To kill yourself out of politeness. Crazy.
Yeah, and of course, as you are aware much better than I am, possibly, it's also had an impact on education. With some, well, I'm told that all Russian schools are now back teaching real people who are being taught by real people. That's not true for the universities, it's not true for my university.
Oh, shame.
And it's not going to be quite, well, next week some of our students are going back, but not all of them. And of course, I believe that some first year students will probably need to be present, physically present, missed quite a lot by not being there on the 1st of September when the new academic year starts.
Well, what I heard about schools is if more than a quarter of people get sick, then they close schools, but till then.
Nice. Well,
Then again, you're not forced to wear a mask at school. You have billions of children coming together, which is an ideal place for, let's say, viruses, because that's what happens every year. Children come to school, to the nurseries, and they just all get sick and then they get better again. It's like a normal part of life. So nobody's forced to wear a mask there, but you must wear a mask there and there. What's the logic? There's a logic. There's no logic. Well, anyway.
oh yeah.
How's your tea? Do you have it?
Maybe we'll take a break. We'll have a break, maybe somewhere in the middle of it. And then I'll be able to see if they have tea. If they haven't, that's even better because I was impacted by the virus. I gained lots of weight, so I have to do something about it. So you get sick not because of the virus, you get sick because of responses, lack of movement, lack of fresh air,
which again is really
lack of life.
like,
Yeah.
what do you do not to get sick? You need to get more exercise, more fresh air. What are people forced to do? Sit at home in dusty little rooms with nothing to do.
Except cleaning themselves. Okay.
So today we have
Something much more optimistic.
at Milne. And he's got a really nice, brilliant little poetry. I really like it, but it's kind of hard to find a poem which would be good for our discussion here because they're like short and sweet. But if you go to some websites and they have the commentary section, and that specific poem has like lots and lots of comments.
Oh, really?
And everybody says, "Oh, I love this poem. That's my favorite poem."
But then they have diverse, differing interpretations of it.
Probably, maybe. But what is interesting is that you have all of the Milne's poetry there, and they have maybe no comments, maybe one or two comments. And that one has just a lot of comments, and it's not a big site, it's like a little website. So there's something very special about this poem, and for some reason people really love it. So let's have a look at it. Let's read it.
Let's read it together.
Yes, finally, because we can't read it outside. Forgiven by Alexander Milne. I found a little beetle, so that beetle was his name. I called him Alexander, and he answered just the same. I put him in a matchbox, I kept him all the day. And Nanny let my beetle out. Yes, Nanny let my beetle out. She went and let my beetle out, and beetle ran away. She said she didn't mean it, and I never said she did. She said she wanted matches, and she just took off the lid. She said that she was sorry, but it's difficult to catch an excited sort of beetle you've mistaken for a match. She said that she was sorry, and I really mustn't mind, as there's lots and lots of beetles which is certain we could find. If we looked about the garden, full of all the beetles hid, and we'd get another matchbox and write beetle on the lid. We went to all the places which a beetle might be near, and we made sort of noises which a beetle likes to hear. I saw a kind of something, and I gave a sort of shout. A beetle house and Alexander Beetle coming out. It was Alexander Beetle, I'm as certain as can be, and he had a sort of look as if he thought it must be me, and he had a sort of look as if he thought he ought to say, I'm very sorry that I tried to run away. And Nan is very sorry too, for you know what she did. And she's writing Alexander very bluntly on the lid. So Nana Mia friends, because it's difficult to catch an excited Alexander you're mistaken for a match. Wow, fantastic.
Certainly is.
Your impressions, please.
Well, really nice impressions. Let me check its impressions. Yes, impressive. A nice sort of poem, a nice little sort of poem, although it's not very little, it's compared to some poems for kids, usually that are maybe half as long, maybe, or it's quite big, and yet if I sometimes get tired of poems that are, well, a page long. This is not the case in here because somehow it catches your attention and it keeps your attention throughout the poem. Nothing special happens. It's not a dramatic story that's being told by Alexander Milne, and yet
it is a dramatic story.
It is a dramatic story on the other hand. So if you look at it as an adult,
it's well, if you look at the pattern, that it is a normal dramatic story. You get something, you lose something, you look for it, and you get it back, or you don't get it back.
Or you don't get it back. Yeah.
And it changes you somehow.
And it changes you somehow. And in fact, it was probably written with children in mind, probably with parents reading it to children. And of course you can understand it as a story of a child, who is I, and then it's easy for another child reading this poem or being read this poem to relate to this child. On the other hand, if you are a parent or if you are an adult just reading the story as we are doing now, you can probably first of all reconnect with your own past as a child in a very attractive sort of way. Again, beginning early 20th century psychologists have been telling us that we have lots of traumatic experiences in our childhood.
Like losing a beetle.
Like losing a beetle, yes. Yeah. So here it is a sort of an experience, but if you are a psychologist, then you can say, oh, it was a child trauma. But that's not what Alexander Milne is saying here. He's not making a joke of it, and yet you can't stop smiling when reading this poem because it's serious and it's optimistic, full of joy, full of something that really attracts you to it. And again, unlike some sorts of classical poetry that I might read, I sometimes say, okay, I've read it twice, I've read it 3 times, I've understood something I didn't understand, but I'm going to stop and refrain from reading it. Here, I can easily imagine myself reading it over and over again. I can, as a teacher, I can imagine providing a copy of the poem to my students so that we can read it together and discuss it and maybe do some sort of tasks connected to the book. So I didn't mind getting back to it quite often. So that's the initial impression.
Yeah, that's very good summary. Yeah, indeed, what we have here is a little...
There's something burning. I hope it's not the camera.
Well,
maybe
I
there's...
think it's the coffee downstairs,
Okay,
probably.
Okay, so they are
Unless you
cooking
have-
somebody.
Unless you had some meat inside your camera, which
No,
is okay.
no, I hope they are not cooking somebody alive. You know, that sometimes happens somewhere.
Yeah, we have a little window to childhood, and But then again, we say that children like it too, not just the adults. Adults like it, the children like it. What we have here, we have different points of view. We have the child's point of view, and we hear the adult, the nanny, talking to him. Yeah, and it's so typical. So typical. You know, you can relate to either side. You can see yourself as nanny being reasonable and saying like, no, there are lots of battles just like that one. And you can relate to the child who says, well, no, there are other battles. It's not the battle, you know.
And yet, you can also see that the nanny in the story is capable of relating to the child, because she doesn't just say, oh, stupid boy, stupid girl, what's the matter with you? She really understands how important Alexander Biddle is for the child, and she goes quite a long way, if not physically then emotionally, to go and find Alexander Biddle, to write things on the matchbox, and to basically, well, she is part of this, well, you can call it, if you're an adult, you say, oh, that's a play, so she's part of this play, they are playing together, which is probably not a bad idea anyway, but she looks as if she really does take it seriously. She is, yeah, she does, and so to her, it's probably more serious than to him, because if you have done something that deprived the child of a beloved Biddle or a beloved something, you have twice as much responsibility. You have responsibility for
to get it back.
Yeah, to get it back, and you can't stop feeling sorry, and you can't probably be stupid because
Biddle's calling.
Biddle's calling. Let me just stop it. It is important. Yeah, put it on stop. I'm sorry. Да, конечно, спасибо. Yes, it works now. Okay, sorry for the disruption. Okay, yeah.
So we have Nanny, we have me, and we have Beetle. And the Beetle is a child, the energetic child. You can see it's quite stated quite plainly in the poem. So beetles, why beetles? Somehow beetles are really, really important in the sense that they are small. So you don't think like, oh, I'm a lion, I'm an eagle, I'm big and cool. No, a beetle is small, but really, really magical. Beetle can fly, but it's not a bird. And how do beetles fly? Nobody really understands. It's really strange physics. But again, you may think about the Egyptians who knew the real value of beetles. Or you may not think about the Egyptians, just think of a beetle who is quick, fast and strange. Because if you think about a lion, an eagle, they're more or less like we. Lions, mammals, big birds, cardinal birds. But insects, so that's a completely different kingdom, a different reality. So they're kind of alien to us.
Yeah. Maybe it's also because for a child, they are exciting simply not just because they are not really known, but also for that reason. You can have a home pet, you can have a cat, you can have 5 cats, and then you can imagine how cats live, you understand that, and then probably it makes easier for you to imagine how big cats, such as tigers or lions, live. The same is true for dogs and wolves and so on. But in a typical English family, as probably that of our child, if it is typical, parents don't usually have beetles or other insects as pets. And that adds to the excitement of finding one and exploring what's beetle's life is like.
Yeah, and I don't know, who doesn't like beetles, catching beetles or watching beetles, little shiny beetles, how they move, how they fly.
Somehow they are more pleasant than other representatives of the insect class, because not everyone is attracted to cockroaches, for example, and cockroaches, to be fair to cockroaches, they can't fly, so probably...
Well, they can, but not much. They can fly, but not far.
They can fly.
They can fly, they have wings, you didn't know? Oh, you know nothing about the cockroaches. What you should do is to read, what is the name of that's a book series, Underworld, where a boy from New York gets to the underworld and you have giant cockroaches and bats and rats and humans. They all live there, they have their problems, alliances, wars. Quite an interesting book, or series of books.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it. But I know cockroaches having wings.
Well, now you know. So cockroaches are kinds of beetles too.
Not my type of beetle.
Well, anyway, that's not a cockroach here. It's a garden beetle.
It's a garden
Again,
beetle.
it's free, it's wild, it can fly, it can run, it's small. It's like a little fairy.
And it connects the child and incidentally the nanny to what you call the underworld, the world of the garden, but also what's below it.
Well, anyway, I found a little beetle, so that Beetle was his name, and I called him Alexander, and he answered just the same. So we enter the poem, and immediately we have this kind of childishness or fairiness to it.
Yeah.
So I found a little beetle, I found him. I found my spirit.
And as you say, it's immediately the I in the poem becomes a child, which is not always the case, because you can have lots of other poems where the speaker says I threw an arrow into the air, it flew. So you're not really sure who the speaker is. Somehow, by just reading the first few words, you already understand. Okay, now
Maybe because he says, I found a little beetle, because if it's an adult, he would say, oh, I found a beetle, or he would say the specific name of the beetle, if he's even interested in him.
Yeah, because also lots of adults care nothing about finding beetles.
So the beetle was his name. So immediately it's all those important questions. What is his name? What is his identity? Because for an adult again, it's just a beetle. You know, it's not just a beetle, it's a person. And if it's a person, then he must have a name. So when I just find him, it's just a beetle, one of many beetles. So I give him a name, and we become connected. We have this really close connection because I called him Alexander, and he answered just the same. You can talk to him, you can give him a name, and he talks to you and says, oh, I'll call you Alexander too.
Здравствуйте.
Hello. So the name Alexander. Why Alexander?
Well, maybe because it's the name of the child, maybe. Maybe it's because somehow in this story Alexander Milne turns out to be a little child who says, I found a little girl. And of course you have lots of Alexanders in history, and somehow it's probably the most well-known Alexander in history was Alexander the Great. And there's a funny contrast between a little beetle and Alexander the Great.
Yeah, because Alexander might not be a popular first name, but you often see it as a second name. Like here, the first name is Alan, normal name, but the second name is Alexander. And again, it's like a hidden name, a secret name, which you don't use just so. Well, you can use it for a beetle to make this connection. Say, oh, I'm the beetle and the beetle is me. And indeed, it's a royal name. It's like the name of the king, Alexander. He answered just the same. So we have this connection, which goes two ways. We have this magic. So maybe before that, in the logic of the poem, the boy had no name, he was just a boy, and now he's Alexander because the beetle called him so in turn. I put him in a matchbox and I kept him all the day.
A sort of appropriating the beetle. If you want to have friends, you don't put your friends in a matchbox. But on the other hand, if you want to be friends with a beetle, you probably have no other choice to. And then the matchbox, I think, to a child, looks like a neat little home for the beetle. It looks. So you don't put beetles in matchboxes because you're a cruel little boy or a cruel little girl. You do that to care for them. You sort of
maybe they probably mean somewhat bigger matchbox than what we might imagine today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not like this tiny little box.
Yeah. So the parent might be a house, and again, probably they are very energetic, these beetles, but who knows whether they really mind traveling that little distance allowed by the box. Maybe they don't.
Well, I know someone who is a big friend with beetles and bumblebees, and they just come to him. And he has a kind of a gourd, like that dried pumpkin, and which is empty inside, and it has a special lid with holes in it. And he just opens it, and the beetle comes in and sits there, and he gives them names too. He's like, "Hey, you, someone, boom, come out," and the beetle comes out. So it's all real, it's all true, because if you can feel the beetles, then the beetles can feel you. So I put him in the matchbox and I kept him all the day. So I found, let's say, some magic, and I thought I could keep it in a box. And I did it for a while, but magic is too wild to be kept in a box. So what happens? Nanny let my beetle out. Yes, Nanny let my beetle out. She went and let my beetle out, and beetle ran away.
Yeah, so while they have this close connection with the child, the beetle initially doesn't want to have anything to do with the nanny, and it runs away, which you might say, if you're a nanny, you might say, well, it's natural for beetles to run away. If you and again, when she did that, she probably could have caught him, but she never really imagined that it was her child's beetle. And
she didn't pay much attention
she didn't
to it, but
pay-
it's just a beetle.
just a bit, and who cares?
But here we have it really emotional, really kind of childish, from a child perspective. When he repeats it, when he tells us, he complains, "Nanny, let my beetle out." "Yes, Nanny, let my beetle out. She went and let my beetle out." So he repeats it to himself, to us, so we feel we understand it. Beetle ran away. So again, we can kind of feel differently about it. Maybe Nanny is fine and she helps the beetle to be out because the beetle is supposed to be free. Maybe Nanny is kind of the evil force here, which does damage without realizing. Maybe it's called forgiven. Yeah. So we need to be offended to forgive. So maybe it's about all those little mistakes that people might do around us, which make us feel like they're evil and horrible when they're not.
And of course, the literal meaning is also makes sense. It reminds us of all those little tragedies which were huge tragedies for us when we were children, and of course no, probably it's not. The other door is, but it's named door is closed. And I think many of us were told by well-meaning parents or nannies or someone, some adults, well, if that's the worst tragedy that happened to you throughout your life, then never mind. But of course it's tragic for children, and somehow it's also, there's a sense of not tragedy, there's a sense of something, because to many of us the beetle who runs away is just a small tragedy after all these years. When we look back at it, it's just a small thing which we might even forget as we grow up. We might even forget it because there are some more tragedies that we encountered, and this just becomes pale in comparison. So this, I think there is some sort of an additional meaning that Milne gives to this little event. And again, that makes it so, well, I would say so beautiful, this poem, because you can relate to it as a child, and it sort of brings back a child in you, but you can also relate to it as an adult who looks, well, doesn't really look down at a child, but who remembers and who understands that life is not only about beetles and nannies and fine gardens, but there's something else in it. And then, of course, the garden that appears in the story later on can be this paradise where you give names to species, and then something happens and paradise is lost.
Well, maybe it's not paradise which is lost in that big sense. He doesn't lose the garden.
He doesn't lose the garden.
It's just a bit of here. But yeah, when we experience something, we experience it fully. It doesn't matter if it looks small to someone else. It's big to us. And it works the other way around. Whatever we may experience now and take it really seriously, will just unimportant in future. Something that is important to us now, maybe just nothing in a year or in a month even.
Well, something that is not only true for this 5, 6, I can't count, 10 lines, let's say, but also for the entire poem is something that reminds me of Mary Poppins. And of course it's another story that is greatly enjoyed by children, and there is a line in it where the twins talk to birds because they can understand the language of the birds, and they are told as you grow up you're going to lose that ability, you're going to forget the language of the birds. So here we have a child who understands the language of beetles, and we have a poet who seems to not have lost this ability to understand the language of the beetle and little children.
And then we have something else in here. We have that story in itself, but we also have the background it creates, a backstory. So we focus on that specific story, but we also have the idea of a bigger story. So if we have Nanny, that already creates another story. It's not Mommy who let my beetle out, it's Nanny. So we have a family which can afford a nanny. We have a child who spends his time with a nanny and not with his parents. Yeah, but that's alright here. So nanny is his sister, friend, not a parent. Not a parental figure who would say, "Oh, just shut up. It's just a battle. It's not important. Go do homework." Nanny. And maybe that's why it's kind of sweet, because there would be closer connection between the boy and Nanny than the boy and, say, mother. Because there's always the distance of authority. And here it's small girl. Oh, it's Nanny. It's not like Mommy, just Nanny. And Beetle ran away. Horrible, no! She said she didn't mean, and I never said she did. So it's like maybe she just like, oh no, not the beetle again. Oh, it's horrible, it's dirty. Let's just throw it out while he's not looking. Maybe he'll never even remember about the beetle. You know, children, they play with toys for a day and they just forget about it. Oh, I don't want to keep a beetle in the room. Like, oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I never said she did. But that gives me an idea that maybe she did. I never said she did. She said she wanted matches and she just took off the lead.
Yeah. So the worlds of the adult and the world of the child collide. Because to the man, at least for a moment, a matchbox is a box for matches, as you are told by all these grammars. And if you are a child, all these adult things like matchboxes and that sort of thing are magical to you. It doesn't necessarily have to function as a container for matches. In fact, it's much more interesting if it functions as something else. And again, you have a sense of something magical. And again, it might be a very beautiful matchbox. You seem to lose this understanding this magical feeling as you get older, and that's what happened to Nanny. And again, somehow she, by saying I never meant it, she begins to reconnect with the child in her. Because she, as you say, she doesn't say, oh stupid boy, she doesn't say, oh stupid Biddle, she takes it seriously. She comes to understand that there's something magical about these simple little things like matchboxes, and to things she might even find unattractive, such as beetles, because not every lady likes beetles.
Yeah, so again, we have a box, and reasonably a box is something for things. And we don't expect to find something wild and magical inside it, so all she has to do is to take off the lid. And again, maybe it's about her too, herself. She has that kind of box inside her, and now she takes off the lid. And what is there that magic? It's not just the boys, it's hers as well. Maybe.
And it's optimistic, because unlike the Pandora box, it doesn't, when you take the lid off, it does not open a box full of something. It's just a tiny funny beetle comes out of it and runs away, because he's probably just as scared as you are.
No, a beetle is magical. Beetles are really, really super duper magical. Because, well, what happens, you can't really see like fairies, magic is in this world through your normal eyes, unless you're really, really crazy. So what happens is your brain kind of reconfigures it, and you start seeing like a beetle. Maybe it's not a real beetle, maybe it's a fairy. But you see a beetle, because that's what your mind, your brain allows you to see. Because if you see a real fairy, then you just go bonkers. You're not prepared to see it, so you see something more familiar, like a beetle.
I'll see something familiar. 25 minutes. Let's give it a restart. Let's pause.
Again, I'm like talking about matchboxes, which are not always for matches. You can use your imagination. You don't have to use things just one way you're supposed to use them. Because there's many more ways.
So I always forget, because it's also true for many things which are not really things. You can use poems in various ways. You can conduct classes in various ways.
You can conduct battles in various ways, including poetry. Oh. She wanted matches, she just took off the lid. She said that she was sorry, but it's difficult to catch an excited solemn beetle to be mistaken for a match. So that's a whole bit is what she said. So now we hear her voice.
Yes.
And again, how do we take it from his point of view? Oh, she just said that and that, and I know it doesn't change anything. Who cares? Or maybe, oh, she really didn't mean it.
She really didn't mean it. She really didn't mean it. And she immediately understands how important it is for a child to have a magical matchbox, and she becomes part of this magic by saying, okay, I opened your magic box because I didn't knew it was magic. I didn't knew that there's something in it apart from matches, and I've mistaken your beetle for a match. Obviously it had to run away. Everyone.
So I think part of the magic of the poem is you read it, you really don't understand the position of Nanny. Was she really sorry, or was it just excuses? Or did she help him because she was sorry, or did she help him because it was her job to keep him happy? Yeah, you read it and it's flowing. You can turn it that way, this way. And either way would be just true. It could be true that way, could be true that way.
Yeah, but at least it's a person who can say things like a beetle and a match, and a beetle mistaken for a match. Not everyone who takes things seriously would say that. So that's again, I think that whatever her reasons might be, and of course one reason does not entirely exclude the other reason. Whatever her reasons might be, she appears to be nice. Well, she wants to be friends with the boy or the girl.
Well,
or
the boy.
The boy, whatever he is.
Because he's called Alexander.
Yeah.
So she said that she was sorry.
I'm talking. Can you imagine a girl
Here.
here?
Well, could be, although catching beetles is usually associated with boys more than girls. You remember Tom Sawyer? It could be a girl.
Okay.
Or, I don't know if a girl maybe it's like a boyish girl in the sense that putting a beetle in a matchbox and keep him all the day. A girl would rather think, oh, I should put some grass in there, something for the beetle to eat and something for the beetle to drink. Maybe I should put it somewhere on my table. Maybe. But it could be a nice girl, could be. But here we have a boy because he's Alexander. And again, maybe that's what happens here. We have a boy and a girl who is Nanny. And again, we have not only a child and adult, but also a boy and a girl. And the girl takes it differently than the boy. It's difficult to catch. So he has found a beetle and he kept him in a box. But he didn't say catch. And just finding, or maybe it's like, oh, hello, would you like to sit in here all day? Yeah, please. Well, she talks about catching, which is again more aggressive, you may say, or another attitude to reality where you don't find and invite, you catch. It's difficult to catch. And again, if you say difficult to catch, already you have action, you have energy, you have a story, you have a chase. Even if it's a beetle, who cares? You have longing, you want something, you can't get it. It's all in the words of difficult to catch. It's losing something. An excited sort of beetle is mistaken for a match.
Yeah. And again, the word match as a matchbox or match as a mismatch, because there really happens a mismatch here.
Or a match in the sense that you can manage it. You think that if you keep your magic in a box, then you can manage it, and it's a match. But it's not. It's bigger than you. If you're on the think-it-is side, the adult side, the box side. So obviously the funny side here is that the magic is inside the box and they're outside the box, and then magic gets outside the box and they need to find it. You've mistaken for a match. Then you make a mistake, mistake. And yeah, you thought it was small and easy, but it's big, it's wild. She said that she was sorry. again, you can say, she said that she was sorry, but I don't think she was. Or she said that she was sorry. Well, that's what she said, I think it's true. And I really mustn't mind, as there's lots and lots of battles which is something we could find.
So Alexander Bickle is unique to the boy. To her, as an adult, there are lots and lots of them. And she is absolutely certain, again, as an adult who should know better, she's certain that it's easy to find lots and lots of them. And that's sort of another point of view. But immediately afterwards, she offers to do that together. And instead of having this controversy, a child and an adult, a boy and a girl, she says, we. And then they sort of, and again, she uses the word find, which is not catch, which is also, if you are about to find something, you are an explorer, you want to discover something, there's a little expedition that they embark upon in order to find the beetle. So on one hand, she makes the boy understand, or at least she thinks she makes the boy understand it. No, maybe she doesn't, but at least her idea is that there's nothing unique about the beetle, there's nothing unique about the matchbox, because they can find another matchbox as well with a lid on it. But on the other hand, she's ready to say we. She's ready to do that together. So she probably gradually, she sort of there's a flow in the direction of being sort of boyish, being childish in a nice sort of way.
Yeah, then again, you can still read it differently. Like, she does it because she wants it, or she does it because she has to. She does it to calm down the child because she's nanny and that's her job, or she does it because she feels like it.
Yeah. And again, you can calm down the child in various sorts of ways instead of going together to find a beetle. You can just say something really harsh, and then the child.
No beetles in that room. No beetles in that house.
Yeah. And well, it probably doesn't calm the child down in a way you expect, but then you show your authority, and there's growing discrepancy then between your own world as an adult and your little child's world. So some nannies, some adults, be they parents, be they teachers, do not want anything to do with the world of the child, which, as we said in the very beginning, is small, not in terms of space, but small in terms of small objects, small beetles and flowers.
Big as the universe.
Yeah. So you might say, no, I'm an adult, I didn't want to have anything to do with it, and it would be natural for you as an adult to say that. But then you can try to open a lid of some sort and try to do that, and by doing that, either for the purpose of just being a good professional man, again, you being much more, as being much better man, much better caregiver, sort of.
So, as we may notice, the beetle has a name, the boy has a name, and Nanny doesn't.
Yeah.
She's just Nanny.
She is Nanny, with which makes her.
So that's her kind of name.
That's her kind of name. It doesn't make her very anonymous, and yet she might remain in this function as a nanny, or she might go on and make herself known to us, and she does make herself known to us because of what she does. She might have,
Maybe he takes her as a part of, let's say, landscape.
Yeah.
So she doesn't have to have a name, she's just there. And she'll always be there. Like, mommy, daddy, nanny.
yeah, and probably there are lots of, as far as I remember, when we were a child, there are lots of names of people, names of things, names that you just take for granted. I was recently remembering some strange names some of my friends had when I went to kindergarten or to school, and they might be a really long name, foreign sounding name, but you just take it for granted because you think, well, that's how the person spoke like. So maybe here again, if you're a child, you have to take lots of things for granted, including having a nanny. Including a nanny, probably just, you might think that nanny is the real name of the person, because you never heard of it. Yeah. What you aren't really ready to take for granted is a nanny, whatever she is, wherever she is, letting your beetle out.
Also, I call a mistake. So what we have here is really a child crying in the sense of shouting in between the lines. Because it's not like, I know she didn't mean it, I know she wanted matches and she just took off the lid. It's like, she said. And we know that from the child's perspective, it's like wanting to cry out, to shout, but it's not so. What's the difference? It's a beetle you don't understand. Yeah, there's lots and lots of beetles which she certainly could find. So we don't have any reply here in the text, but we can feel it. We know it. We understand it. Because as there's lots and lots of beetles which you certainly could find. No! It's not true! There's just one beetle who is Alexander Beetle. He's the one. I don't care about lots and lots of beetles. They're different. They're irrelevant. Who cares? It's like a lottery, and one number is important. And who cares if we have lots and lots of other numbers in the lottery? So we can feel it, we can hear it, and as it's not said, it's not put on paper, it becomes bigger and stronger. And again we have this polarity or contrast here between what is said, what is not said, what she says, what we feel, and what, again, the adult side, reasonable, and the childish side, which is feeling, sensible, in the sense of sensing. Lots and lots of beetles, which is certainly we could find. If we looked at all the garden for the holes of beetles hid. So now we have something nice and interesting. We leave the house, we leave the boxes. We go first in the garden. So again, we know it's like a wealthy family. They have their own garden. Nanny, and that's so big, you can find little beetles in it, you can hide there, you can play there. And yeah, like you say, obviously the garden is like the garden, some ideal place where you have little magical beetles hiding here and there, you can find them.
Which is probably true for many child, for many, in many children's experience. It's true. This first poem that started me, the Walter de la Mare poem. He has this book, and there's a huge space occupied in that book by the writer, well, the writers, not his, but the lady who's sort of writing the book. She spends a lot of time in the garden, so it's her entire world. It's only natural maybe for a child to see the garden, even though it might be a small garden, as being huge. And I, again, talking about my personal experience, I never lived in a house with a garden about it, but I remember just making my little enclosed spaces, sort of where you just stay and say, okay, this is my garden, this is my little thing, where I am free to do whatever I want to do in a very magical way. And of course, when you think of the holes, somehow the holes were not part of my garden, but maybe it's because the nanny and the child are ready to go even deeper than just looking at a few trees and flowers. So holes, they must be really interesting for children.
Well, then obviously a garden is the inner space. You may think of the Secret Garden book, which literally reflects that idea. Garden is our place of life, because if you think about a house, you say, well, it's man-made, it's all squarish, it's all orderly, shaped, there are rules, things. While the garden, on one hand, you look after it, you shape it, you care about it, but at the same time it's alive. You have plants, you have trees, herbs, beetles, worms, birds, animals in it. You can't predict it, you can't really control it. You are responsible for it, but you can't really control it. It's that part of you which is really alive. And so we go into the garden to look for this little magic.
Look for this little magic. Minutes of magic left.
Okay. Yeah, holes. Again, who would like to look for holes with beetles? Yeah, again, a very specific idea. And a hole is nothing. Hole in what? In reality, in water, holes in perception. Because from our point of view, our perception is smooth, because that's all we perceive. But if you look more closely, if you start paying attention, you may notice that there are little holes in your perception. You don't see them because they're holes. You can kind of see the edges, and then you know there is a hole. And that's where you start looking to find your magic, your beetles. Because obviously as they are magical, they make holes in perception and reality by being there. So it's not like there's a hole and then a beetle finds it. There is a hole because there is a beetle. There's a hole in your perception because there's some magic there, which we might not be ready to perceive, to see, to feel. But we know it's there, and it is there, and it's active, it's alive, it's real. If we looked around the garden for the holes the beetles fill, and we'd get another matchbox and dry beetle on the lid. So as we don't get too much freedom in the garden and the halls, we come back to the idea of boxes. Because if you get too much freedom at the same, at one moment, it might be too much for you. So at first you need to come back to your boxes and write beetle on the lid. So again, that's her point of view. If there's a beetle inside, you should write a beetle on it.
Yeah, which is important, lest others open the box and find something unexpected. So there's something rational about it, something from the world of the grown-ups. But again, the problem with children is that they do grow up and they...
Is it a problem?
I don't know. Because they lose lots of things as they grow.
Well, you don't have to lose things as you
You
grow
don't.
up. It's again, it's a question of education. So what I guess happens is you have lots and lots of energy as a child, but lots of power, but you don't know how to manage it. It just runs sudden wild magic, as they say. It just happens. You don't know what happens next. You can't control it. But instead of learning to control it, your own power, what usually happens is it gets repressed, sort of. It's just locked away and forgotten. Like if you don't use it, it can't hurt you. And then we say, oh, we've just lost all these magical abilities we used to have as children. No, it's still there, but it's not practiced, and it's not mastered. It's still there, you can still open it, but then you wouldn't know what to do with it when you do it, because you never practiced. It's like about any kind of skill. If you have some power, but you don't practice it, well then you do nothing with it. If you're afraid to use it, you put it away. It doesn't mean you became a master of it. It means you just wasted it. Well, I think that is what happens. And a lot of power, when we think about children, then lots of people think, oh well, children are cute, children are lovely, children are just curious, but there's a lot of destructive force in children too, which again needs to be mastered. Like a child may build something and then just smash it, and that is good because you don't get too addicted to things. Things are only things, who cares? Yeah, but you need to learn to be that way, to do it in a more responsible way. So next time you think, it's just a car, let's just smash it. You make sure it's your car and not somebody else's. So that you don't hurt anyone when you do it. When the children don't always realize it. But there's a lot of energy in children. I guess it just gets locked away, and then as it doesn't get any more energy, it just dies out eventually. Or maybe it just sits there. So we get another matchbox and write beetle on the lid. So first we have a situation where a child does something that he feels right, puts a beetle into matchbox, let's say. And then the adult comes, nanny comes and lets the beetle out. We don't know if it was an accident, or maybe not. And now she says, let's write beetle on the lid. So now we have another way of doing it, which is more reasonable. We went to all the places which beetle might be near, and we made the sort of noises which beetle likes to hear.
Yeah, the two of them sort of playing this game, living into it. Many children yes, but let's restart it. Yeah.
So we went to all the places which a beetle might be near, we made a sort of noises which a beetle likes to hear. So like you said, now they do it together, they do something childish.
Yeah, and I used to, as a child, I used to love adults who can do that sort of thing, who can go and do this, make these noises, and to basically to sort of play with me and to be, if you can be serious about a play, and you probably can, the adults who take this sort of play seriously.
Well, it is deadly serious. It's really vital to find your magic, which ran away, got spoiled, that's what it does. So it is deadly serious. It's not a game, it's for real, it's important.
Yeah.
So we went to all the places which a beetle might be near, made a sort of noises which a beetle likes to hear. Now they come to the beetle reality. They think from the beetle's point of view. Not as an adult, not as a child, but as a beetle. So what sort of noises a beetle would like to hear?
Yeah, that was my question.
You know beetles?
Yeah, well,
There's a
there's
fly. Not really a
a
beetle.
flying beetle. Okay.
So maybe that. Well, I think maybe like because they learn to talk in beetle language. So can you say something in the beetle language?
No, I can't.
You may try. Imagine there's a beetle hiding somewhere and you need to pull it out. So we cross the reality. First we come from house to the garden, which is already the land of the beetles, magic. And then we don't come there as intruders. We don't come there as like, oh, I'm the boss and it's just my colony. We come with respect. And we try to assimilate. Yeah, if you come to the beetle land, then you need to talk like a beetle. Because nothing else would make any sense. And then I saw a kind of something. So again, it's not clear, it's just something. Maybe it's there, maybe it isn't. Exciting.
Yeah, and I don't want to just put labels on all I see. I'd rather prefer to say a kind of something. That's much more interesting.
And then again, I didn't shout. I gave a sort of shout. A beetle howled, and Alexander Beetle coming out.
So that's, again, a house is something that humans build, but nothing really prevents you from attributing the word house to something built by beetles or bees, and then if you are an adult, you will probably say that you have this anthropomorphic understanding of reality. So you describe everything in your adult human being terms. But he is not an adult human being, and to him a little house is just as magical as any place, and probably much more interesting than just an immediate comparison with a house built by a human being. A little house. And then it's not just a little house which is already quite interesting, but he's excited because someone, Alexander Little, is coming out to say welcome, to meet them.
Yeah, and you may say that there's no separation. He sees the beetle, he knows, oh, I'm the beetle is me.
Yeah.
We're not different. It's me in the beetle reality, and I'm that beetle in a human reality. So they go there, they kind of transform themselves into beetles, and then the beetle responds. And do you think it's the same beetle, or it's a beetle which just looks similar? I think it's the same beetle because they did all the magic. But you may think, again, you may kind of test yourself. If you think, no, of course it's not the same beetle, it's just a beetle which looks the same. They all look the same. So that would be one point of view. Another point of view is you feel it and you know, well, it can be no other beetle but the beetle because of the way they get there, how they get there, what they do, not what they do. And then it's not how the beetle looks like, it's how you feel that beetle, how you feel the connection, and that cannot be fake. Because two beetles may look alike, but you feel your true connection. It's open.
It's open. Well,
The lid is open.
the lid is open and someone is approaching.
Beetles. Bugs. Cockroaches.
Ну, вы добрались. Вы открыли локацию.
Было много.
And they do not close the door. Oh, we can do it for them. Silly little beetles. Never learn. Close the doors. A-bit, Alexander Beetle, coming out. So if you feel the connection, then you know it's the beetle, because it's a part of you. You can't mistake a part of you, because it's you. And so, it was Alexander Beetle. I'm as certain as can be. And he had this sort of look as if he thought it must be me. So from the beetle perspective, again, we come to the beetle side. All boys look the same. But he's like, that must be you. You, that one. Yeah, I know it's you. I know there are lots of boys. They all look the same, but it must be you. So the beetle is in the same position as the boy. Is it the same one, or is it the one that looks the same? It must And he had a sort of look as if he thought he ought to say, "I'm very, very sorry that I tried to run away." Which is really sweet reunion. I did have a look at the Russian translation called...
There is a Russian translation.
Well, if you look at the Russian translations, they're really amazing. Most of them are much better than the originals, strangely. That one was a bit funny because maybe I don't understand it, but he added a joke about the Beatles as the band, which is a bit strange in the poem. But there was a bit of a change here, and in the translation he said, "I'm very sorry that I tried to run away, but I will run away again." You don't have it in that poem, but I think it's so in character. I really enjoy those translations, really. I don't normally read translations because usually they're nothing near the original. But all these translations are so much better than the original. It's crazy. It's like he takes the original format and makes it a million times better. Even though the original poems are nice. Translation.
Yeah, but that could be another idea to make this stage to have a class where we compare the original and the translations. And I don't know.
Well, you can do it yourself because the translator is really a genius. Okay. So, as if he thought he must be me, and he had a sort of look as if he thought he ought to say, "I'm very, very sorry that I tried to run away." And again, you may say, again, you may test yourself and say, "Oh no, it's just his fantasy, it's what he wants to think." Or you may think, he can feel it, he knows it, but he can't quite put it into human context. So he can't say, "Oh, the Beatle told me he was sorry," because the Beatle doesn't speak in human language. So he uses these phrases like a sort of as if he thought. And he had a sort of look as if he thought it must be me, and he had a sort of look as if he thought he ought to say, "I'm very, very sorry that I tried to run away." So we have Nanny who is sorry that she let the Beatle out. We have the Beatle himself, who is sorry that he tried to run away. It's like, but now I'm back. I didn't mean to run away. I only took off the lead. I couldn't resist it. So the title is Forgiven. Who is forgiven? The Beatle for trying to run away? The boy for being stupid? If he was stupid. Nanny for letting the Beatle out? Who's forgiven?
Everyone is forgiven.
Yeah. Oh, we need forgiveness.
Yes, but there's something that is interesting about this. Very often we see everyone as these typical Beatles that lack their own faces. They are all faceless to us. They are just human beings. They are just boys.
Again, the adult point of view, because from the child's point of view, they're all different.
Yeah, and that's what we sometimes lose as adults, and very often, even though we might be working with people a lot, for example, as teachers or doctors, we perceive people as sort of functions, and it's easy to understand why. But that's probably not the way it ought to
Well,
be.
there was a joke on a PhD comic, like when you become a teacher, then like first year you see individuals that's Mary, that's tall, she likes ice cream, he has a funny t-shirt. But then you start seeing people as types. Okay, these ones are going to be bad with their homework. These are going to always trying to answer. These ones will always be late. This one will always have stupid questions. And then you have more practice, and you just start seeing them as what did they say? As like a masses of students. Like, okay, today I have 100 students. Okay, today I have 200 students. Okay, who cares about names, what they like, what kind of t-shirts they wear? Maybe that is what happens. And again, on one hand, it's good because you look at the person and you know what kind of person that person is. So you don't need to waste your time on generalities like, I need to find out what kind of person this is. So you already know by looking at the person because you have a lot of experience. And then you may look at a more personal side because you don't need to waste your time on looking at the general side. Okay. But again, that's what you do. That's your practice. It takes some effort because it's easier not to think about it. Just
And that's why some teachers, especially with some teachers and some teachers who can afford it, create a barrier between themselves and their audience. They might create a physical barrier by just reading from the notes, where you don't really look at your audience, and if you do, then they are just audience. They are not people, individuals.
I'm very, very sorry that I tried to run away. And Nan is very sorry too for you know what she did. So again, it's like a childish way. Well, you know what she did. I'm not even going to name it. It's too horrible. You know what she did. And she's writing Alexander very blackly on the lead. So we had it in the past, now we come to present. And again, that's important, the change of time, because that's all the backstory now. It's not important, it's solved, it's finished, it's a happy end. And now what's important is present. Now, and now, what is now? Who is it? No one. And she's writing Alexander very blackly on the lid. Something interesting happened to the matchbox. First it was just a matchbox without any special signs on it. But then she suggested to write beetle on the lid. Because to her, it's just a beetle. It's not different from any other beetle. You can put any beetle in it, it would work. Any old beetle would do. But now she's writing Alexander, because she's been there with the boy. Now she knows it's not just any beetle, it's Alexander beetle. But at the same time, it's a bit creepy, because now she's going to put the boy in the box. And she's writing very blackly, so he can't escape. I like this poem, I like how it can turn and mean and bring just opposite impressions. Maybe it's a happy end, or maybe it's not a happy end. Maybe Rinani is nice and good, or maybe she's really evil and wants to keep the boy in the box. Yeah, so you have these impressions which keep changing depending on how you read it. Is she sorry? Was she lying? Is she just kind of trying to indulge him? What is happening here? And you have no answers, nothing specific. So it can be either way. So Nan and me are friends because it's difficult to catch an excited Alexander you've mistaken for a match. It's just a brilliant ending. And again, how do we feel about it? Nan and me are friends. Oh, good, hooray, forgiven, happy end. Because it's difficult to catch an excited Alexander you've mistaken for a match. Because she can't catch me. I'm Alexander. You think I'm your match? Again, you think you can catch me? Why do people sigh? Why do people sigh?
Well, I know someone who does it in the very business. He has a very high voice for a man. As he enters the room.
Why?
Because that's a sort of idea.
Sound a little bit
Sound
like
that, yeah, sound that identifies and that attracts other beetles.
Because, really, what is a sign? Little attention maybe, or maybe it's about breath, how we kind of change our mode, what I would say. Maybe I told you, because I really like telling people about it, one of the Ig Nobel prizes went for the research on why do people sigh. And that research, people were given a riddle which had no answer. And they were told to solve it, they didn't know there was no answer. And they were trying to solve it for an hour and 2 hours and 3 hours, and finally, as they gave up, they all Okay.
Yeah, so we are all given riddles that lacks a solution.
So maybe when you have no other solution, you kind of move yourself to a slightly different reality perception. Nan is very sorry too, for you know what she did. And she's writing Alexander very blackly on the lead. Again, very blackly, so no one can mistake it, so that it doesn't go away. Because that's like in there.
And then the word blacklead isn't a usual word, so it's that there's again something childish in this black word. And that makes quite an exciting contrast.
So Nan and me are friends because it's difficult to catch an excited Alexander you've mistaken for a match. And finally we see that if we didn't understand it earlier, that the boy and the beetle are the same. So you may try to keep your boy, child, in a box, but the moment you open the lid, he'll run away, but he won't run away too far because he wants to be found. He wants your company. But now that you're friends, maybe he won't run away. Okay, anything else you can say here? So why do people like it so much?
Well, I think that's because although we say that each and every one is unique, it's only partially true because of course there are certain similarities, there are things we have in common, and
like we just said about students.
Yes, and that's why by writing about this particular boy named Alexander, Milne also writes about boys and girls in us that are revived by reading this little story. Also, not everyone likes to be boxed neatly, and the fact that an excited Alexander will certainly run away. You can't just box him. Means quite a lot. You have to understand that you don't have. Not everybody can be. Many people can, but not everybody can be put very space with some boundaries and.
Yeah, so it's like a very optimistic ending.
Yeah.
On one hand, we don't like our beetles running away. At the same time, if you are the beetle, then you hate being in a box. Like, that's what he doesn't like being in a box, he likes being out in the garden, in a real place.
And the real challenge is whether you escape both very strict rules that prevent you from being magical things, and whether you are not given to sort of anarchy that might mean not just chaos, but something which might be a destructive force as well. So the destructive energy.
That's all the kind of calls for freedom, for magic, for children being children, not restricted. Because usually children are really restricted. Because like we said, you can't really control their power, so they have to be sort of limited for their own safety, so for safety of everyone around. But who likes it? People who like it. It's how you do it again, how you learn to limit and control your power. So we don't really have many people who can do it, who can teach you that. So what happens when a child comes to school, just like sit without moving for 40-45 minutes? Then you can move a little bit for like, well, now it's 20 minutes.
Now it's sort of, as far as I understand, they might be prevented from moving even during breaks.
No, what happens now is they have a lesson which is 40 minutes, not 45, and then we have 20 minutes break, and they have to stay for 10 minutes in the class, 10 minutes in the class, and 10 minutes outside in the corridor. But then they're supposed to, each class is supposed to have their own kind of spot in the corridor.
That's nice.
But even in normal circumstances, it's like, okay, you can move, you can walk, you can't run, you can't shout. It's again like in that old joke, like a boy comes from school and he's like, oh no, how can it be? What is it? Well, first you teach us how to walk, how to talk, and now they tell you to sit down and shut up. Where's logic? No logic in it. But we do have some schools, but maybe not in Russia, which are more free. Or maybe they're too free.
Yeah, that's
Again, you do need to find the golden measure, because if it's too free, then children don't learn at all. So I know there's a school somewhere, maybe it was Japan or some kind of hot country. It was not really outside, it was like a hut, which is nice if it's a hot country. Then there was a school, I think it's Japan, but maybe it's somewhere else, where children could choose the lessons. I don't think it's a very good idea, really. So they have lots and lots of classes, and in each class there's a teacher sitting and waiting for someone to come to him or her. Like, oh, I want to study astronomy today. Oh, I want to study math today. But I guess what happens is, I don't want to study anything today. Or I want to study this today, and that today, and that today, and in the end you know nothing, because you only have a bit of that, a bit of that. I think discipline is important. Freedom is important, but discipline is also important. So maybe that's what the poem is about, how to find the good measure between freedom and discipline, between child and mature.